You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks for coming back once more to listen to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I'm your host, Steve Adams, or Mighty Blue, and for the next 4 weeks we're going to be having some shortened episodes because I'm heading out west to California on the John Muir Trail this coming Sunday. Those of you who have followed the show for a while will know that I have a less than stellar record on the John Muir Trail. I've tried it twice and failed it twice, both times after 3 days, so this is going to be the third time's the charm for me. So for that reason, the episodes will be shorter, though no less entertaining, and I hope informative. Won't be catching up with Katie while I'm away, as she took 5 days at home last week, and there didn't seem a lot of point in getting an update from her this week. When I do get back, one of the first things to do will be to make contact with her again and bring you all up to date with how she's done in the 4 weeks that we haven't spoken. And then, of course, I haven't got a book at the end of the show right now, but when I return, we're going to have another one ready to go. So each of the next 4 episodes will have an interview, a few words from me, and then the music. Because I'll be out of touch, I won't be sharing the episodes on Facebook. So if you don't want to miss an episode, make sure you either go to our website, hikingradionetwork.com, and listen, or subscribe under whichever platform you prefer. On our website, there are links to pretty much all the platforms which will enable you to follow every episode as they're released. Today's guests have recently completed the AT in a very quick time, but that is really only a tiny part of their story. Vince and Monica Strawbridge took their family on a hiking odyssey and achieved all 3 major trails as a family, and thus have all become Triple Crowners. They've got quite the story. Monica's audio plays up a little, and we do laugh a lot, but I'm sure you're going to enjoy listening to the Strawbridges. Here they are. So today we've got a couple who, along with their children, recently summited Katahdin. Now, I mistakenly assumed that Vince and Monica Strawbridge were doing this as a one-off to teach their kids something, but I could not have been more wrong. Hi, guys, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Well, as I said, I thought this was just a one-off, but Katahdin was actually the completion of your family Triple Crown. First off, congratulations, obviously. And second, why on earth did you think that was a good idea? Either of you can go, but actually, I spoke to Vince. Okay, let Monica answer because I actually spoke with you the other day, Vince.
Okay, why did we think it was a good idea to do? Well, we started off doing a one-off, the PCT in 2018. So that was going to be our one trail that we did, and then after we finished that, and that was a great experience, after we finished that, Vince kind of came to me and said, what do you think about doing the other 2? I think we should do the other 2. And I was not for it. I'll say that.
Well, okay, I actually want to step back even further than that.
Okay.
Why did you think, because I think your youngest at the time, Georgiana, was 10 or 11 years old. Is that right? Something like that. Yeah. This was in 2018. So why did you start hiking? What was the background of your hiking initially?
Well, we started backpacking with the kids, just kind of as a way to have something inexpensive to do with them, because we were kind of broke after the housing crisis.
Sure. Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, by the way.
yeah, we got a lot of us. So we kind of started just like, hey, this is an inexpensive way to have a vacation and do something we like. And we, let's see, I don't know. We went to Ray Lakes in Kings Canyon National Park. I think it's Kings Canyon. Am I right? Vince and I did for like my 40th birthday.
Right.
And it was so gorgeous and so great. And I kind of had a dream of doing a through hike on the AT, actually.
Wow, your fault then.
From my high school days, or I thought I wanted to do the AT at some point, but I assumed I would never be able to do it until the kids were out of the house, and
sure.
that phase was over. And so we took a backpacking trip with the kids in the Smokies, and we just kind of saw that they were really more capable than we thought they would be of carrying their own stuff and walking a long distance. So Vince was like, "What if we try to do it with everybody?"
So do you think that was something within them at the time, or do you think that the trips to the Smokies brought that out of them?
The ability to hike.
Yeah, because it's not natural for a lot of people. It doesn't come easily for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Did they take to it straight away?
I don't remember them complaining a whole lot. I mean, I know they were tired at the end of the days, but I think it was mostly fun on that trip to the Smokies, and they were able to do, at the end of it, I think we had done 12 miles by 2:00 in the afternoon or something, and we were kind of bowled over by how much we had been able to accomplish with them, and we weren't having to carry all their stuff and kill ourselves. So that was kind of the...
But it's a whole lot different, isn't it, when you could do a 12 miles in the Smokies compared to 3 or 4 months on the PCT?
Yes.
So
yes. I didn't know if they would be able to do it or not.
Oh, good. How did you prepare for that then? I mean, actually, what we actually should do is introduce your children. I mean, they're not here right now. So there's Aiden.
Aiden mm-hmm.
is the eldest, and she's currently 18 or 19. Is a girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah. June, hopefully, is a girl as well.
Yeah, she is.
She's 2 years younger, I believe.
Yeah.
Then Henry, a little bit younger. Then Georgiana is now 14. Is that right?
Henry was, at that time, Henry's 16 now, but he was at that time 13 on the PCT. Yeah.
Okay. So you took all your kids out there. Which of them do you think has enjoyed all these adventures the most? And which would you say has enjoyed them the least? What about you, Vince? What do you think? Vince is about to take a cup of coffee, by the way.
What do you think?
You guys are doing great.
No, what do you think, man?
Yeah,
who do you think has enjoyed it the most?
Maybe I
was tempted to chime in a little bit earlier because I think you provided one of the greatest motivations for the distance on that hike that helped us get over some hurdles. When you went shopping for food and bought far too little. So we were motivated to get out of the woods on a loop hike back to food.
Yeah. So it's hunger. What a fantastic motivator!
Oh, it was fantastic. We were splitting backpacker meals or mountain house meals. We would each get one serving per night of a mountain house meal, which was not enough, and we had one bar a day, and we were all like counting our pieces of trail mix and trying to make our way out.
So I presume the unhappiest is the person who was the hungriest, then, were they?
Oh yeah,
on that trip in particular. Yeah, and we had arranged with my brother to come join us, and it was really funny. We'd arranged with him to come join us, and we'd parked the car, and we left him hit a key. And he went to go into the car to grab extra food because we'd packed some extra food. So we were looking forward to the last night, the feast on the last night.
Right.
And he came hiking out with two of his children. And he said, "Hey, I never found that food. I guess you carried it out here." And we said, "No, it was in the car." And he said, "Well, where was it? I looked everywhere." I said, "It was in the backpack in the driver's seat where I told you I'd leave it."
Oh dear.
So not only did we have to feed ourselves on our tight rations, but we also had to feed my brother and his two children that last night. So it was quite a miserable trip, but it really is. Food is a great motivator.
Oh, so definitely. No question.
I've interrupted. I'll actually answer your question. Your question is who enjoyed it the least, and I would say June, by far, our second daughter.
Okay.
She has struggled with coordination throughout her life. And in every way, she's had the hardest job with everything, with school, with athletics, with everything, and so this was no different. So these trips were a challenge for her. And I was thinking, how amazing, though, it has been for her, because she's operated roughly in the red line for the entire time. You're really only as fast on these trips as your slowest, when you are going with a group that is fixed. And she's always, until parts of this trip, when Monica got to be the slowest, she's always been the slowest, and not by a little bit.
It must have done wonders for her confidence, though, the fact that she's been able to do it, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I do think so.
There is, and watching her story herself up a hill is a fascinating thing. And I spent a lot of time with June in the back. I tend to gravitate or drop toward the back to be with whoever's in the rear, and watching June work through those sort of stages of emotion as she stands at the bottom of the hill, invents an excuse for not starting it, then begins the hill, and then begins to give up, and then starts to coach herself through it. And then, almost inevitably, 95% of the way through, she says, I can't do it anymore. And she sits down and gives up. And then, stands up again and finds herself over the top.
Because she's learned there's no alternative. You've got to go forward, haven't you? And I think that's the wonderful lesson to learn. But she can't have been struggling that much. You really fly, you guys. And I don't know how long it took you to do the PCT and the CDT, but you only took about just over 3.5 months to do the AT, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you were averaging some pretty darn good miles, or were you not getting off the trail at all and having no zeros?
We took zeros. I think we took more zeros on this one than we did. Did we? Is that right, Vince? That we took more on this one than the others?
I haven't added them up. I would say it's probably roughly equivalent to what we did on the CDT. But what I would say to that is that both of the other trails set you up and sort of pit you against a weather window from the start, and so you have a goal that you have to make.
Right.
And my kids hate cold, so that's a great motivator. Another
motivator, hunger and cold, yeah.
Hunger and cold are great motivators. You don't want to be in the Rockies in the fall. You want to be down and out of elevation, and they get taste one winter storm, and it really is a great motivator. And so on the other two trails, we really had something pushing us, something driving us, that really was sort of hanging out there. And by the time we did this one, we were just sort of schooled in that mentality.
Right.
And so it was, we could have adjusted, but we didn't. And when I set up one of the things I actually had great concern about the Appalachian Trail in regards to was the cost.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It is not as inexpensive a trail as the other two. And so I was very nervous about that. And so what I did was I set up a resupply strategy that kept us from hitchhiking even into town. We just passed through a lot of towns, and we did 4 or 5, 6 day carries rather than 2 and 3.
Sure.
And we did that deliberately. We mail all of our resupply to ourselves. So.
Now, I don't want poor old June to think I'm picking on her, but now, since you mentioned it, as she reflects, and I know you've given your children the camera sometimes to reflect upon their hike. I certainly saw one of them on the CDT anyway. Does looking back on it for her, does she look back on these journeys with pleasure, with accomplishment, do you think? Or do you know how she feels about it?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think definitely accomplishment. I'm not sure. She does not think, I want to do that again sometime in my life. I think she's the one that's like, I'm retired. I mean, they all kind of say that, but I can tell the other 3 would entertain the idea of doing it maybe in their adult life,
Yeah.
But I think she's the one that talks like she wouldn't, but I do know that she is very proud of having accomplished those 3 trails.
As she should be. She's a triple crowner at 16 or 17, so it's just amazing. And what about the one who enjoyed it the most, do you think?
What do you think, Vince? I want to see if we match up here.
both say it at the same time. I do.
Are you ready?
I'll do on 3. One,
Henry.
2.
Monica, where were you?
Aiden. I was going to say Aiden.
You were going to say Aiden?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would have said Henry.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Why would you say then, Monica?
She enjoys adventure and is just kind of a little more lighthearted. Maybe one of our more lighthearted kids. So she's the one I heard from the most saying, "This is a great adventure. This is fun. This is beautiful. This is, you know." Now, it doesn't mean the other kids weren't feeling that, but she expressed it probably the most. So I can see Vince's answer for sure.
And why was Henry your pick then, Vince?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. It suits him. He is extremely good at it. He does not mind discomfort. He loves the contemplation of the long walk. He stops and appreciates beauty. He's invested in not letting you know that he's enjoying it. So I can see why he wouldn't make the top of someone's list. In fact, his mantra the first hike all the way through the PCT was we would get to the top and be looking out over an expansive view, and I'd say, "Henry, what do you think, buddy?" And he'd say, "I've seen better." So he's got kind of that.
Never seen better. He has never.
Imagine being jaded at that age. Oh my gosh.
Well, he hasn't even seen better. It was just I'm going to stick it to you, Mom and Dad.
And I seem to think I looked at your website and you describe each of your children individually. Is he the one who doesn't like showering? Or you said he discovered deodorant at the end. No. Maybe you want to revise that website then, that part of it. Right, now, so you started with the PCT, as we said, and you and I just want to tell listeners also that if you've been following these guys on YouTube, they finish with somebody else called Caden. So before we get on to the PCT, tell us about Caden and his brother Cameron then. Why they were with you?
I'll have to separate the Cadens. There's a Caden with a K and there's a Caden with a C, which is only going to complicate it.
Yes, make it do the simple bit because I'm just a simple guy.
Okay, we invited two boys from Lakeland who don't have a father. Right. He was killed trying to escape a gang in Detroit, I believe. Oh, geez. And their mother became good friends of the family when she became caretaker, end-of-life caretaker for my grandmother.
Right.
So at Thanksgiving, I offhandedly mentioned that they could come with us and hike the entire trail before consulting Monica. And
that appears to be a theme, by the way.
Thank you. Yes. That is a theme.
But I'll shorten it by saying one thing led to another, and they set out at the beginning with us with a plan to hike the entire trail. But the trail is not for everyone. It hit them pretty hard, and it was very difficult for them. So it became apparent in the first 150 miles that they were not going to make it the entire way. So what I asked of them was that they make it 150 miles before they do it, so that they can sort of have that to prove that they did it.
Good thing to think of, yeah.
Yeah, and so, but the other Caden with a C, is a member of a large family locally, the Baker family. He's a good friend of ours, and they had long dreamed of doing the entire Appalachian Trail. So when we were coming around to having completed the Continental Divide Trail, coming around to doing the Appalachian Trail, we talked to them, and they had planned to do a section of the Appalachian Trail this year. And we said, well, why don't you come at the start with us and do a section? And so we sort of targeted all of Georgia. Well, so now you have Caden and Cameron with a K, and you have Caden, son of the Bakers, headed out into the woods with us, and Caden with a C, Caden Baker, the second day looks at his dad and says, I'm going to do the whole trail. And his dad said, yeah, that's not going to work out. But it was sort of growing in Caden Baker that he wanted to come with us the entire way, and it was disappearing in the other two, Caden and Cameron, that they did not want to go. And it kind of coincided and overlapped enough that it gave Monica and I a chance to really reflect and say, okay, this one didn't work out. Do we want to commit to the other? And Caden Baker is a full of life, impetuous, hilarious, fun, nonstop, amazing hiker. He's Ugandan born, and he was adopted by his parents at the age of 3. And he is as full of life as any kid that you can imagine. And
a super, super strong hiker. I mean,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Fly, so.
But you started remembering, because you do like to multi-hike, don't you? Because we're kind of jumping ahead to where I was going to be, but that's fine. I'm happy with this. This is about the AT. How many of you started at Amicalola Falls?
Well, it's hard to say because we started with another family.
Exactly.
So altogether, there were the 6 of us, the 8 of them. So that's 14, and then Caden and Cameron. So that's
but you're forgetting Haven. They're cousins.
Oh, and Haven, they're friends.
17.
17.
So how popular were you?
17.
How popular were you at the first couple of shelters?
Oh,
what was that
like? We just avoided the shelters. We didn't even. Everybody looked at us like, "Where are you guys going tonight? Oh my goodness, where are you going?" Like, trying to get there before we got there.
But I want to go back now. Actually, I want to go back before we come more about the AT, because this is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, but I want to talk about the other things as well. So you started with the PCT in 2018. What was the thought process about going to that trail first, because you live on the East Coast for a start, and why did you choose to go sober, which is, as I understand it, an unusual way to do it? Mm-hmm. So what were those choices?
So southbound is certainly less common, but for us it worked out with the school calendar. It made a lot more sense. I was pretty active in the forums, so I should have known better about the demand on the mileage, that the window was tight enough that it was going to be difficult, but I didn't attend too tightly to that. But it really was school calendar that drove it. In terms of the choice of the trail, it was the lack of familiarity. We spend a lot of time in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina and in that area. And so we had exposure to that and thought, well, we could spend the rest of our lives moving in and around this trail system. That one is one that is entirely unfamiliar, except that Monica and I had done, as I said, or as she said, we had done that loop hike in Ray Lakes, which is in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And we had loved it so much that we did look at each other and upon leaving and say, we got to bring the kids back here someday. And so we sort of had that dream. I don't know if it's one funny caveat is that the thing that drew us to the Pacific Crest Trail was that Ray Lakes region. And I was telling Henry, because he loves to fish, we love to fish, and I said, listen, there are trout swimming in that pond, in those lakes up there that are Henry, they're 2 feet long, and they're waiting to eat something. I sat on a ridge above them, and I was dropping leaves, and it was hitting the water, and they'd come over and look, and I thought, Henry, we're gonna catch some monster trout. Well, when we were going through the Sierra Nevada, we got caught in a snowstorm up near and spent the night in Muir Hut with the snow all over the roof and dripping on us and cold. And Henry hit some hypothermic state or very near. And so we had a rough night. And so we were committed to getting through the Sierra Nevada as quickly as we possibly could. We were strong hikers by that time. And so we did a 26-mile day into the dark.
Wow.
Did a couple passes, 26-mile day into the dark, woke up before light, and topped Glen Pass above Ray Lakes without ever seeing one lake, because we walked into the region of the dark and out of the region before light. And I said, this is hilarious. The entire reason we came.
Well, hopefully I'll be going over Muir Pass myself, because I'm going on the John Muir Trail in a couple of weeks' time. So maybe I'll try and I'll send Henry a picture of one of those 2-foot trails. So it must have been, as parents, it must have been thrilling for you to see, because you didn't know much about, hiking PCT particularly. It must have been thrilling for you to see them merge into a kind of hiking unit. Was it a gradual transition, or did they just grow into it? Did they just get it straight away?
What are your thoughts, Monica?
I don't feel like we got anything right away. I mean, it didn't feel like, really, perfect.
Because it felt different to the Smokies, I'm sure. Very different, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it was definitely, yes. I remember getting out of the car in Washington, and it was snowing, and we were terrified. I mean, we were not terrified, but we were just like, what have we done? This is crazy. Like, we're out here, and there's nothing out here. And, I mean, we just kind of jumped, and let's see, did we become a hiking unit? I don't know.
Well, I'll what do you think about this, Monica? Because I think one thing that we had really going for us was, one, that you're so remote that the miles demanded of you. You're 90 miles from anything, so you just have to go. And I can remember looking at Georgie, who was walking in melting heavy, slushy spring snow, and her feet were just killing her because it's all day with your feet being tweaked, and she was just crying. And I said, listen, my dear, sweet 11-year-old who I can't believe I've dragged into this, I love you, but you're just going to have, I mean, you can cry, but you just have to walk and cry. Like there's nothing for it but to go. And so it was terrible. I mean, it really was, it was heavy for a while. And there was a lot of parts during the day where I was thinking, what have I done? Are we bitten off more than we can chew? But one of the things that I think that really helped us was we had these sort of constant markers out of the gate. We had friends, very good friends, the ones that got us into backpacking. We're doing a West Coast trip. And they were planning to meet us at Chinook Pass, 300 and some miles down the trail. And we had a target right out of the gate.
Sure.
And our target demanded 18 miles a day, and we had planned for that, and we had food for that. And so we were quickly building toward that. And then all of a sudden we hit southern Washington, right? Actually, we got into Portland, and my same friend, messaged me and he said, hey, you're behind schedule. And I said, I'm not behind schedule. I planned for 14 to 17 miles a day and we did 18. Back off there, fella. And he said, no, you have to get through the Sierra by October 7th. And I said, through the Sierra? I thought I had to get to the Sierra. And so we were spurred on. We were spurred and pushed toward our limit all through Washington, chasing a goal, and then all of a sudden in Oregon and Northern California, we were spurred on by this new goal due to some bad math, and we walked about 26 miles a day when we were walking, and they did it. They just it was surprising. It's like you were asking earlier, when did it happen? My little nephew Silas, who came with us on the hunger walk in North Carolina, that loop hike, he cried the whole way for 7 miles, but then he showed up in Washington and he did 18 miles a day without whining. And my kids were the same way. They went from...
Well, you've actually just answered what the next question was going to be. How did you feel as parents with all that responsibility of the safety and science? So basically all you said was walk and cry. Was that it? Because, and joking aside, I mean, that is an issue, isn't it? You have to consider their safety on that sort of thing, particularly the Sierras, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. And as a parent, the thing you're dialed into is what kind of pain are we talking about? Like, sure. I have to understand. It's a difficult question because the question is not internal. It's not, hey, what kind of pain am I feeling here? Is this a sore hip flexor, or am I talking about blisters that could get infected and be debilitating? I mean, to weigh the kind of pain that you're reading in your child's eyes is a difficult thing, because there will be pain. Everyone walks in and through pain on a through hike, at least that I've talked to. I don't know anybody that doesn't.
Oh, totally. I'm
pain.
Constant pain, yeah. And, in fact, I find that your pain in, say, your knee or your elbow, or whatever it is, tends to get blurred a few days later because another pain is worse. So you don't feel that one anyway, So you must have found out, because people often talk about character on the trail. Did your kids surprise you in any way, or did they react as you'd imagine they would? Or did it just reveal character within them? Because doing those miles must have been quite an achievement for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it revealed so much about them, I think. I mean, and built things in them, character in them. But I think it revealed a lot of toughness, a lot of, places where they might be mentally needing to be stronger, places where I needed to be mentally stronger. This is about the kids. I feel like they grew so much. And kindness to each other. I mean, supporting each other, supporting us, you know, sometimes.
I had an experience with Henry that I think is illustrative of this. Like, he's so fast. He's so fast relative to all the rest, and he always has been. And so he would get frustrated and impatient and bored, and so I spent a lot of time trying to coach him through what it meant to wait well for people and to find ways to be helpful and those kinds of things. Well, we come about, 800, 900 miles in. Monica started developing some foot pain that was not insignificant and became pretty full-blown plantar fasciitis. And so we had to slow down. The trip was really threatened. We were probably 300 miles from the end, and we got x-rayed just to make sure there were no she wasn't walking with stress fractures or anything.
Sure.
So we walked out of there, and I can remember beginning to get frustrated myself because we were so strong that we would do our 20-mile limit that's where we were calling it, but we would be done by 2:30 in the afternoon. Wow. And I was starting to be a little bit Henry. You know, I was angry, I was frustrated, I was impatient, and I looked at Henry and I was looking for solace and commiseration, and I said, "Isn't this driving you crazy, Henry, just having to wait like this?" He's like, "Dad, it's Mom. If we have to wait for her to finish, we'll wait for her."
So who became the 14-year-old boy? That's hilarious.
But that's just there were so many things like that where you just saw these transformations where the kids would go from they would gain this ability to push through adversity or impatience or all those kinds of things, and see that
great life skills they're getting. You know, I think it's one of those things, and I'm sure everybody benefits from doing a hike like this and learning how to do it and learning how to take the pain and kind of getting on with it. And now my listeners over the years have probably realised that I try to find a point in my conversation with my guests where something they've said to me when we've had the initial conversation really resonated with me, and I want to discuss that a little bit more, because this was going to be a one-off. As you said, you're going to do the PCT and you weren't going to do any more. What on earth possessed you to go for a second and a third? And I know you weren't on the same page on this initially, but how you resolved it I thought was fascinating. You actually had a round table, is that right, with your friends and your family to talk through the pros and cons. Were the two of you arguing your case to them, or how did it work out? I'd love to know both sides of this, by the way.
It was suggested to us. We met with, we kind of went to see Vince's uncle, who we both really love, and he said, you know, you guys just have different visions of what your family should be doing. You have a vision, Monica, and Vince has this vision, and they're different, and I think you guys should get your friends, people that you trust and respect and who know you both very well and love you both, and get them together and sit down and see if you can figure out how to get on the same page, you know.
Wow.
And so we did that, and I mean, we do have great friends, and
it's like submitting to binding arbitration, isn't it? I mean, sorry, I've got to ask you, did you go into it saying that both agreeing you'd accept the outcome, or did you say, well, let's hear what they say and then we'll make up our mind again? I mean, how did that go? Because I can't imagine you having that.
What did we do that, Vince? I don't remember.
Well, I remember feeling like, I was watching your lineup and the people you were picking and the lineup I was picking. I was like, this is fantasy football. This is like fantasy football. I was going for the craziest, most outlandish, out of the box livers, and I was like, these are the people I'm after. And so, but they were all great, and they were great to each other, very kind, and listened well. In fact, what I would tell you is there was this one unbelievable, one of the couples is they're the ones that got us into the backpacking in the first place.
Sure. Very
good friends, invest their lives in the people around them, and just can't seem to help it. They do this with everybody. It's not just us. And one of the things she said was, I'd like to take your kids out to have ice cream and ask them what they think.
Because that was a big concern of most people too.
That was a lot.
What do your kids think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as big a concern for me. In fact, I said, I want you to know that I appreciate what you're doing, and I do want them to be heard, but they don't really have a vote in the end. But she took them to ice cream, and she said, she just went through and said, what did you love about the last trail? What do you anticipate that can be, what did you hate about the last trail? What do you anticipate that could be good? What do you anticipate that could be bad? And she just took enough time to do that with all of the kids individually. And I really say that to say, well, one, I loved some of the things that the kids said, positive and negative, and also to give you a sense of the degree to which our friends were willing to invest in us over something as arbitrary and insignificant in the grand scheme of life as us deciding whether or not we would hike another trail or two. And it was just so cool that they loved us well enough to do that with us.
Yeah, the end result of that, so it didn't go the way you wanted it to go initially, Monica, or were you brought round by the argument yourself? Because you were the one who was resistant, weren't you?
I was resistant. I was very unsure. Vince is kind of, I'm sure you can tell by talking to him, he will just go for things if he thinks it might be a good...
I gathered that, yeah.
Yeah.
Got that the other day.
I'm a little bit more like, well, let's think through the future consequences in school and what I was mostly about the kids in school. I think it might have, maybe it was all that, but I came around. I really did. I think talking it through with some people that just kind of helped me see the big picture in their lives. And, it wasn't my vision, but I think I just became willing. I mean, I realized through that kind of arbitration or whatever, it was really just us meeting and talking, and they both heard both of our sides and how we felt, and gave their input, which was really great. But I think after going through that, I realized that Vince was not asking me to do something that I consider bad or a negative experience, or he wasn't asking me to do something that I disagreed with fundamentally. It was, so I don't know if I'm being clear, but I was able to kind of get on board with it.
But it also enabled you to realise your schoolgirl dream, didn't it? That's what you wanted to do originally. You wanted to do the AT.
That's the thing I think is so interesting about that whole dynamic, is that I didn't want to do it when he suggested the other two. But I was just thinking about this morning. I generally, I don't always know what I need. I don't always know what's going to be best for me. And I don't think that's specific to me personally. Only I think we don't know a lot of times, what will be good for us. So I feel really fortunate, actually, that one, that we have friends that would do that with us, that we got to do that we got to be heard. I mean, we went into some counseling over it. It was good. I think our marriage grew a lot out of it. And yeah, I'm really grateful that we got to do it. So, and I wouldn't have ever, I don't think, I wish we didn't do that ever, So.
I'm sure, and looking at, watching one of your Summit Day video on Katahdin today, it looked like it was you were having a fantastic adventure. But I am aware, and Vince told me this the other day, that the AT was your least favourite hike. Vince, what was the reasoning behind, why was it the least favourite? Was it because, thank God that's all over now, it's the last one out of the way? or was it because it was something that just the others had something that the AT didn't have?
I think this would be fascinating, and it's to talk about even, and I think that you could be informative probably in that kind of a discussion. But there are things that are difficult about it for us. In particular, the way we went about it was probably different than your average or standard Appalachian Trail through hiker. In terms of fitting that profile. We were sort of schooled on those Western trails, which have a little bit different mentality. The attraction there is a little bit different in some ways. It's these giant vistas that just, you think you're on another planet when you stand in front of those other places. It's not that standing on top of a mountain in Maine or above those rolling hills in Virginia doesn't take your breath away on some level. It's just that you feel like you've stood on Mars when you've stood in the middle of the Sierra Nevada, or in the middle of the Wind River Range, or the green and the. I mean, Georgie said one time we were standing in the Cascade Mountains, and I said, "What do you think, Georgie?" And she said, "I feel like I'm in an ocean of mountains, like it just piles and piles and piles away, and it just feels raw and rugged." And so when we came with that experience. We came better suited to hike the Appalachian Trail in some ways in terms of skill. I was fascinated to watch my kids. I did not know how much they knew until we started with this other family that does backpack. They do camp, they do backpack. But my kids were, it looked intuitive. It was that well rehearsed and well learned. The things that they knew, the things that they did, the things they watched for, the way they cared for the others, made sure they had water, made sure, I mean, just things that it would look intuitive if you looked from the outside, the things that my kids have learned. And I did not know they had learned as much as they had. So we come into the Appalachian Trail with all of this exposure, experience, but maybe a little jaded, probably. We've come to do a job. We've come to get it done. We've come to walk the miles. And we come in March when it's brown and leafless. And we come to a trail, and these are two other points I think I would make, and I really would love your feedback on this. The two other points I would make is, one, that the Appalachian Trail. First of all, before I say those two, I'm going to say I cannot believe that in our country there's a trail that weaves its way through that dense a population of states.
Oh yeah.
It retains wilderness that close to cities so that people can get out and experience it. It's amazing.
It really is.
I am fascinated that it exists. So while I'm dumping on it, I don't want to sound like I don't appreciate that it's amazing. But it is hard for families. It seems like it's set up for solo hikers. A $20 tent is cheap for a solo hiker. A $30 bunk with a shower and a bed, that's cheap for a solo hiker. But when you multiply it by 8, I could go to a Marriott. It is so expensive to do as a family in some ways. And so part of our motivation to be fast was to save money. And part of the motivation to keep moving was we can't stay, we can't linger and experience it in that way.
Do you think you lost something from the hike by hurrying, though, in some ways? In terms of the social side of things, I guess. Or wasn't that important to you?
I'm sure there is a social side. The group that we were, first of all, we're such a big group. We don't get a lot of social interaction because I don't know, maybe people are put off by how big we are. But, we did get more on the AT than we ever have, probably. But the groups that we were in were also hiking as fast or faster than we were. So we were kind of in this group of people that were hiking quickly. But I do think we probably lost. I don't know what I would say we lost, but I do remember thinking it would be nice to slow down a little bit in certain areas, or for a day on the trail or something like that. So I think there is that tension of we needed to finish by a certain date because we had these family commitments and kids activities that they were in college, get to college, so we had some time constraints. And I think it would have been different it would have been a different hike if we had been able to slow down a little bit. But it's interesting because that's one of the things sort of as a dad trying to figure out how do I motivate each of my kids. We all are motivated very uniquely and very differently.
Sure.
Probably the best example is that when we showed up to trail, everybody was saying, "Oh, you're the family," and we'd say, "Yeah, I guess we're the family," and they'd say, "Where's the dog?" And then we figured out they were talking about another family that was ahead of us. Everybody was talking about the trout family. Really neat. And so we see their name in a log in the Smokies, and they're 10 days ahead of us. So what do you think happens, of course, in the boys? Me, Caden, and Henry, we're we're going to catch the trout.
We're going to catch them. Of course we are.
and the girls are like, what is wrong with you people? Like, who cares? Like, I'd like to meet them, but we'll meet them when we meet them. And so we're having this sort of like tension within ourselves and we would try to catch them, and we got within one day of them, and then there was a closure to the trail because of some electrical lines were down, and we did a road walk around it, and they skipped it to come back later, so we got another day behind them, and so we started calling ourselves the Cutthroat Trouts. But the girls didn't want anything to do with it. None of them, like not one of them cared a lick. And so we were so excited to meet them.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, is the difference between men and women on the trail. men are dumb and women are sensible, and they take their time.
Exactly. Well, you should have seen it. You should have seen us the day after we met them. Henry and Caden and I were just devastated. We were like, I'm not even sure what we have to live for. Like,
they were like, I don't even feel like hiking anymore. Like, what are we going to do?
Oh, that's funny. Look, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about, which fascinated me when you mentioned it the other day. You told me about Trail School. Bearing in mind you were going so fast and doing all these miles, I know you homeschool your children, or up to a certain level. I'm not quite sure how that works, but tell me about Trail School on the trail, which I thought was a pretty interesting thing.
Well, yeah, well, the idea, one of the things that we had that's advantageous is my cousin is a teacher in a classical academy, and he's developed a lot of questions, prompt questions for significant work. It's actually by a guy named Paul Johnson. He's a British guy that wrote a history of the American people. It's really good and very interesting. And so, as you know, that like as you walk through these places, a lot of questions pop into your mind about the places you're walking through.
Absolutely,
history was fascinating and very easy. In fact, I heard you talk to Juliana Chauncey about a project she has coming, which I think is as necessary or fascinating an idea as I have come up with it. And we did some of that on the trails as we would walk through. We would listen to this literature, or we would listen to this history of American history, and then we would sort of spring off of it, sort of like spin-off series, and listen to local histories, Native American stories, and early founding stories, and just whatever we would spin off into, and literature that coincided with the history. So it was very easy to find ways to hang hooks on the things that we were interested in. And so we would join each other and talk about we would read the Bible, and we would talk about that, and we would talk about the American history together. And then from there, the kids just listened to books as they were inspired. And I can't remember what it was. I think we listened on our trails collectively. We listened to 8 months worth of Audible.
Yes, I saw that. You had lots of. You had a list on your Instagram. You had all the various things you had, and there was only one thing that was just one haircut. Who got the haircut?
I did. I did. And I sat down in Denver, and I asked for a haircut, and I said, cut it all off. And the guy did not get very aggressive with it. In fact, his fellow barber walked around, and he said, I don't think he's going for a mullet. But my wife could not get him to get himself to cut it off in the back, so I just left it, and I walked with a mullet for a good while.
Classy. Well, look, I'm so glad you came on to tell us your story. What are you going to do next? Is there a follow up to this? Are you going to have another round table to see what you do next, or what's going to happen?
We probably need another round table just in general for normal life. But
okay, I'll leave that bit to you two in that case.
I don't know what's next. I mean, I know the kids have to get through high school, because for all that trail school that we did do, which was some really great stuff.
Sure.
I mean, math and science science is, you talk about scientific things on the trail all the time, but the things they need mathematically and I forget. Writing. I mean, it's hard to write on the trail. So
yeah, sure.
There's stuff we need to really focus on and kind of finish out high school.
Then maybe just the two of you will go for a hike, because they won't want to go with you anymore, will they?
Yeah, I don't know. I know. That would be. It'll be interesting too when we do. I mean, I'm sure we'll go again together, the two of us, and it'll be interesting when they're not there. We're gonna have to figure it out.
We have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, look, you've been absolutely wonderful to be on the show. We've actually talked longer than I've talked to most of my guests.
Oh, wow.
And you've got so many good stories to tell, and I really appreciate you coming on. So thanks very much indeed.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, well, take it easy. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
What a thoughtful, deliberate couple they are. I do love Vince's assertion that the kids didn't have a vote. But working it out in that way, through your mates and your family to help you through the thought process to make sure that you're both on the same page, I think there's a lesson in there for all of us. And I think that those kids, however much they may have moaned about the hike from time to time while they're out there, those kids will have absorbed so many great experiences and have so many wonderful memories of their time together as a family on three of America's greatest trails. What a legacy, eh? Because of the need to front load these next 4 episodes, I won't be in a position to thank all of our supporters. I'm going to do a big catch up when I return from the JMT. But suffice it to say, however, that I am humbly grateful for the donations I've been receiving recently, as listeners have responded so well to my request for funds to maintain these podcasts. Thank you so much. So that's it. I'm soon going to be heading out. I'm nervous. I'm excited, and I know that many of you wish me well, and for that, I thank you just as humbly as I did for your donations. I'll see you next week.